Terrific. Greetings, everyone. My name is Maria Coyne. I'm the president and CEO of the UCC Cornerstone Fund. We are delighted to be presenting a workshop today, Case Studies in Faith, where we look at the impact that building projects have had on ministry and on the community at large. We are sitting here in 700 Prospect with my fully vaccinated lending colleagues, and we are delighted to take you through several case studies that are fairly representative of the kind of work that we finance at the Cornerstone Fund. So just briefly, a quick reminder about who we are. We were founded in 1993. Our mission is to join together in faith, to invest in and build community. That capital C in community is very important. We raise our capital by selling socially responsible investments to individuals and to churches. Sorry, we forgot to click the recording button. And we turn around and lend that money to churches and other faith-based organizations that help them not only strengthen their ministry, but also build community. With this General Synod next week, we are very excited to be launching two very important new programs. We'll give you a sneak peek at the end of one of them, which is the Creation Care Investment and Loan Program. And we're also going to be launching our Racial Equity Giving Bonus. Two very timely products that help us really enhance the work that we're doing to both love the planet and love our brothers and sisters. So let's get started. I'm going to turn the mouse over to my colleague Joseph Morgan, who's going to take us through our very first case study, which is related to a refinance.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited that you're here and excited to be here. We want to start off with refinance options, just to give churches an idea of if they have an external loan, if they have a loan out there, a mortgage on their property, how they may be able to save the church some money during these trying times. Our first case study that we're going to look at, we'll get to in a second, but we want to look at reasons why you may want to consider refinancing with Cornerstone Fund. You can oftentimes, right now, especially during these times, find a better rate. We have longer amortization periods. A lot of churches will find out their local bank will only amortize out for 20 years, but we can do up to 30 years. Move away from a balloon note. We're also a mission-based organization. We have an attractive fee schedule, and we have a zero prepayment penalty to pay off your loan from church-raised funds. Our first scenario we want to discuss is a scenario where the church opened up a loan in 2017. Their balance at that time was $500,000, and they had a rate during that time at 5.5%. Their payment was roughly $3,400 with an amortization of 20 years. But with that amortization, they only had a 5-year balloon. So in 2022, January 2022, they are coming up on their maturity date, at which time the bank may choose not to renew their terms, or their terms will be drastically adverse to the church, and now the church is scrambling to find a new loan that works for them. So potential Cornerstone Fund terms would be that at their balance right now would be about $420,000, and our current offered rate is 4.75%. Give them a new payment of $3,200. The church opted to only amortize for 15 years. That because they've already paid off 5, they do not want to extend debt out much further than they already have. And now they have a 5-year arm, which means that we're not going to balloon their note in 5 years. The benefits to this for the church is that annually they save a little north of $2,000 and $10,000 for the next 5 years. Their loan is still paid off at their original maturity based upon an amortization of 15 years. They also get peace of mind knowing that their church does not have to worry about a balloon note being stopped at 5-year intervals. Plus, they get to align with us because we have similar missions to them. Our second scenario deals with a church that wants a longer amortization period. In 2019, they opened a loan, again, for $500,000, but rates in 2019 were a little bit higher at 5.75%. Their payment was $3,500 per year. And again, they had a 20-year amortization with a 5-year balloon note. And their loan matures in 2024. But because rates have dropped and lowered, they are looking to get a better rate and a longer amortization period. Their balance since 2019 has dropped to $464,000. A new rate of 4.75% will give them a payment of $2,400. They are deciding to take a 30-year amortization period from this month with a 5-year arm, and their maturity date is July 1st, 2021. Now, why would a church go out for 30 years from today? Well, it assists the church with cash flow. And they plan on running a capital campaign to pay off this loan. The church saves $13,000 annually, and over the next 5 years, $65,000. Once again, this gives the church peace of mind moving away from a balloon note to an ARM, and that the bank's potential prepayment penalties should be made up within the first year of refinancing with Cornerstone Fund. A brief overview. On the right, I won't explain it. I will not explain this right now, but we have some important considerations from Cornerstone Fund versus a local bank. But Cornerstone Fund offers better rates, longer terms, and options that gives our clients peace of mind. Not only that, once again, we want to stress that we are a mission-minded organization. And while your scenario that I've not described may be different, we have many ways that we can help your church refinance and save money with their loan. And we ask that you please reach out to us to see what we can do to meet your church's needs. Now I want to turn it over to Janine Caloza, who will describe one of our projects going on now.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to be looking at the second case study, which is the use of surplus space or land. So we get many requests from churches over the past several years about, we've got this extra space, we've got this extra land. How can we best utilize it to kind of grow our church and congregation? So the one I'm going to talk to is an affordable housing project located on the West Coast. Actually, it's a blend of several projects. So we wanted to kind of model something with a lot of different characteristics so you could see what may or may not pertain to you. So this is a smaller project, less than 20 units. It's considered affordable because of the rents that they'll be charging. However, what may be affordable in the Midwest, it's probably not the same as what you see in the West Coast. So the reason, because their affordable rents are so much higher than what we would consider, we were able to help them make this smaller project, less than 20 units, work financially. So the church was not using their fellowship hall, it was fairly empty, and decided that there was a higher and better use that could serve the community. They were looking at 1-bedrooms and studios, and their plan was to make the units available to renters with Section 8 certificates. The reason they went in this direction was because many times if you're dealing with HUD, you have a lot of different requirements required if you are HUD subsidized versus using HUD funding within the project. So they worked with their local housing authority to determine a waiting list and what other physical requirements would need to be included in the units for Section 8. So we're just going to do a real quick summary of the project strengths. A West Coast community, the affordable housing fit in well with the church's mission, as well as there was a very strong community need. And it's not like the project just came out of nowhere. The church leadership had historically strong relationships with government and other nonprofits, which kind of helped them develop some of these opportunities that were presented to them. They also started out with a very strong architectural team, and they were experienced with adaptive reuse. And I can't stress this enough, making sure that your team really meets the kind of project that you're looking to do. So this team was really strong with adaptive reuse, that they were very nimble and able to adapt as the project changed from, 11 units to 12 units, or the size of the units change and how to make that blend with an existing church and sanctuary. One of the project's strengths, as you'll see, was probably also one of the project's weaknesses. Given the project's smaller size, the church chose to use a smaller contractor. They had lower overhead, they were more experienced in custom residential construction, but it also allowed the church to bring their budget in at budget from the get-go. There was a much lower overhead. The project was small, so there was no Davis-Bacon or prevailing wage requirements, also because of the funding. So that was a real strength. The church pastors were incredibly involved. They were, on all of the team meetings. We had a weekly team meeting with them to make sure that things were moving along. Also, they also had a developer consultant that they worked with. So they hired a development consultant to kind of work with them to move the project along, kind of teach them what they may not know. And we also had the lending team. So in addition to having the architect through the project, a lot of times folks will keep the architect until you get your permit and then they're gone. They chose, and I think we actually required them or strongly recommended that they keep the architect on site to kind of do the draws and review the work that's being done. They also companioned that with an on-site project manager who worked with the architect to move things along. Another project strength is that they took the opportunity, since the building was being opened and under construction, and also this was planned pre-COVID, but it ended up, during COVID, they had a little more flexibility to make changes to the sanctuary and the church because the building was empty. And they also took advantage of the empty space to, they increased their technology, they made space improvements, larger kitchen, all of it kind of lined up with the mission of the church. And with any project, there are always challenges, and with any project. And these projects were no exception. So the church was very involved, as was the project development consultant, but their level of expertise, they were novices. So I think we have worked with them, they developed their expertise. I think they would do this again with what they know, and we would probably support them in doing so. But it was a big learning curve that they went through. So that was a real challenge. So the general contractor, finished up the project. Things are being done, but they also had very limited capacity. They had done, some very large scale residential houses, custom houses, but nothing to this extent. Adaptive reuse is a very different animal when you start opening things that haven't been opened before. So it did slow things down a bit. I think also because the general contractor was small, they had some cash flow issues, right? So we often had to step in and kind of help them mitigate some of the challenges that they were facing with cash flow. Again, as we talk about the project team, we had encouraged the church and the development consultant to hire a real estate attorney during pre-development. They were hiring attorneys who were fine, except they weren't specialized in real estate. Some of the questions that we were asking them, it just took a really long time to get to the answer. Do you need a separate LLC? Do you need a separate corporation to protect the assets of the church? And when we were saying we needed an AIA contract because it was a larger contract, it just took a very long time to develop something like that. We did this as a way to protect not only Cornerstone Fund, but to protect the church and its assets. And it's really did slow things down, kind of circling through a couple of different attorneys. The other thing is knowledge and management of the project budget. When you go into a project like this, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million or more, you really need to understand what's underneath each budget line item. It's not just, it's kind of like a big lump number. You really need to understand how you arrived here. And I don't think they had a super firm sense of that from the beginning. For that reason, they started, when you have a contingency, and the contingency wasn't as large as we would like for an adaptive reuse, but the contingency wasn't disappearing quickly because you weren't getting to the end of the project. And so it was starting to be eyed as as a line for extras. We want this, so let's look at the contingency line item because it hasn't gone down as quickly. We ended up using the contingency and then some without the extras. So it's just an important thing to know your budget, and the contingency is it's a safeguard and not a line item to be used for extras. Other project challenges, this goes to the operational side of things. Operationally, the development team should have identified property management, a plan, and staff in the pre-development stage. It's often very helpful to have property management staff as part of developing the drawings, as well as developing the operations budget. There are certain things that a property manager would be like, no, we're not doing that, because they know it's expensive or they know it's high maintenance. And it's very important to include some of those views early on. The church will do that, and they also chose to do property management internally, which for a project of this size is not necessarily a bad thing or an outrageous thing, but it's important to know that going on. It's important to have that staff trained, because the operations and operating budget are so important to the future success of the project. Where I believe that Cornerstone brings added value. This team has experience from many different types of lending. We've got, some micro business, we've got a lot of portfolio work, commercial and nonprofit lending. So we think that we ask a lot of the questions because we bring expertise and experience from many different corners of the lending world. I think we ask a lot of questions that may be hard, but I think that they're ultimately very helpful. We make strong recommendations about putting together that team, including the real estate attorneys. And again, we're doing that to protect not only the church's interests, but ours as well. In this project in particular, and many others, we feel like we provide bumpers for an experienced team. We want you to have a very confident contingency. We will give you feedback on your budget, on contracts, inspections. We'll review a lot of that beforehand to make sure that you're including things that we think will protect you into the future. So lessons learned. Project was a big learning curve for the church, but I think they would do it again, and I think we would work with them to do so. They really learned a lot, and I think in the end, we came out as a much stronger team. The project was several years in the making, and what really impressed me about this church was that they finally just did it, right? At some point, you can plan and you can plan and you can plan, but they just did it. And, they really hustled to get a special rezoning. They just started to put things in motion and kind of put a team around them, and they got it moving. I will stress again, obviously I had an issue with real estate attorneys being included in the project, because I think spending that money early on saves you a lot of money going into the future. It really helps you structure what the project could look like based on, pros and cons of what the organization could look like. And my final point is you need a good team. You just need a really good team. And I think a good development team makes a good project, and a good project management team makes a good project. So you really do need a good team. And I think you need to spend some time making sure that you take the time to select. I am with the last slide here is we are actually putting together a library of webinars and presentations like this. It's located on our website. Within the past year and a half, we did 2 webinars. This one was specific to church property, redoing the church and the sanctuary, actually planning it and then doing it. I really like them. It's a church out of Medina, Ohio. We also have a very skilled architect, construction representative who kind of puts in his thoughts on different contracts you may use, why you want to use lien waivers. And this church did a great job. They also, hit some warts along the way. So please feel free to visit our website, and you can see some of these other webinars and videos. And so now I want to take the time to introduce you to Rebecca Pereira, who's going to speak with you about a solar panel project we've done in the past year, as well as other energy efficient projects that we've been working on recently.
Thanks, Janine. So I'm sure everybody is sweltering through the 90+ degree heat that we have in Cleveland. I know that our Zoom goddess, Sarah, we were talking before you joined us, she's in 97 degrees in Virginia. So very timely to talk about energy projects and energy stewardship. We're going to talk about a solar project that we did, but if you don't think that applies to you, please also know that we're going to talk about other things, less expensive, but very impactful creation care steps all churches can take. So hold on to the glitzy solar project if you don't think that necessarily applies to you. So this was the church. It's a church in the Midwest, just a 100-member church, very, very middle of the road church that we see all the time. They had a church member who took it upon himself to erase the church's electric bill through solar. So here's the church, and okay, are we unmuted and past our technical problems?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were able to do this through these solar panels that you see. They actually zeroed out their electric bill. Very often when we look at church financials, we see that the electricity bill is the church's single largest building expense. And solar has gotten now to the point where it can reduce or even eliminate the cost of electricity. This church and many others have used state incentive programs which are designed to zero out your electric bill. They specifically are meant to get to zero, not anything more, not anything less, zero. It's surprisingly affordable. There are solar tax credits called SRECs, which you'll probably hear a lot more of in coming years, and state incentives that are available in many places. They can certainly be hard to navigate at first and very confusing, but there's a lot of help available. This is one website, letsgosolar.com, that provides a wealth of information broken down by state. So I encourage you to go check it out and see if what applies to your particular church. Over time, the savings that come from solar continue to rise. So this is an example of what happens for this church that we just were looking at, the one that put the solar panels are. Their payment, because they're zeroing out their electric bill, they will not have any more electric bills really forever, will stay at that red level. They're not going to ever rise past this. If they were not able to, due to shade or some other considerations, say they were only able to reduce some of their electric bill, but not all of it, they would only be paying about this much in the end because they're going to have some new electricity, but not a lot. Their solar is going to take care of it. For the church that couldn't do any of it, their rates are going to be way up here. So over time, the costs really do multiply. So how do you pay for it? Usually projects must be paid for up front, and all the good stuff comes later. You get your credits, your incentives, your free electricity that comes after you build the system. So how do you do it at first? It can be very intimidating. Cornerstone is one of the few lenders that would be happy to work with you to tailor a low-cost loan to work with your specific situation. Your church will spend money now, but you can save a lot later, as you saw in the prior slide. So here's our real-life example. Again, going back to our church in the Midwest. It cost $80,000 for them to install that system, and they paid for it with an $80,000 loan from Cornerstone. Within a year, $60,000 of it had been reimbursed through their SRECs from the state. And so that left them just $20,000 on the loan. They chose to pay that off in 5 years. We could certainly have stretched it out longer if the payment seemed onerous, but they wanted to do it in this way. So 5 years of $375 a month payments, and they'll be all done paying the loan. The minimum monthly savings and electricity costs, $500. So over the 15 years of the system's guaranteed performance, it's $90,000. Yes, that is exactly right. This church will realize $70,000 in net savings over the 15 years the system is guaranteed to operate. And then once rising electric rates are factored in, the savings are even greater. And the best part of all is that the system doesn't end at 15 years. It's guaranteed, the state requires that it be guaranteed for 15 years. It's monitored for 15 years to ensure that it is performing as expected. But there's no reason to think that it will stop performing at 15 years. Many systems go on 20, 25, 30 years and continue to operate. So just think, how would your church use that $70,000 savings? But most of all, beyond the money, it's the right thing to do. It's good for the planet. As an average solar array on a house offsets about 18 barrels of oil per year. And on a church with a much larger system, it's even more impactful. It's also good for the congregation. It's a great way to engage your congregation in creation care. It's the kind of thing that's practical, it's measurable, it's impactful, it's achievable, and it's very inspiring. And it's small steps make a big impact. This is a statistic that I found very stunning. If America's houses of worship cut energy use by just 10%, which is absolutely doable by every church in the country, I can say without even having seen them all. 2 billion kilowatts would be available without additional pollution, and 1 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions would be prevented from just 10%. So it's a very inspiring statistic to just do that 10%. So what can you do right now? Say you don't want to do a solar project, you don't necessarily want to take on something huge. There are a lot of steps that you can do right now that will be not expensive and that will give you a huge impact. Number one, get an energy audit. They're inexpensive. You can sometimes get them for an incredibly inexpensive rate from your gas company. So definitely reach out to your utility companies, especially the gas company, and see if they are doing energy audits and what they offer. There are also many resources if you start to Google around energy audits in your area. If you look for something called a green rater, that's a specific designation. We will also have some resources that we will put on our webpage. And the UCC has a wonderful resource page, which there's a link here. It will be on a slide at the end of this presentation as well for you to take a look at. There are a lot of ways to get an energy audit, and it could not be more valuable information. Even if you're not able to do all the recommendations right now, it gives you a blueprint for what you're going to do over time that will really make a difference. The other thing that is overlooked all the time is insulation. These are two steps that people skip all the time. And we had one church that we know of that installed a state-of-the-art HVAC system. It was supposed to save them a huge percentage on their heating and cooling, and it really didn't. And because they skipped this first step, getting the energy audit, and they didn't realize that they had no insulation whatsoever in their attic, and they were very efficiently heating and cooling the great outdoors. So once they solved that problem, then they got the, they were able to actually get the return on their investment they were expecting. So insulation is not glamorous and it's not expensive, but it really has a huge impact. And you can get an energy audit to help identify where you need to put the insulation. Another thing you can do is use your leverage as a buyer and consumer of energy. You can, from almost every electric company in the country now, buy clean energy. It does cost a little more, but it incentivizes utility companies to produce or buy clean energy. The graph you see, it's a little hard to read, but it's kilowatt hours of solar produced in the United States, starting down here in 2006 and going up to 2015. You can see there's an exponential rise between 2012 and 2015. Just imagine 6 years later, 2021, we're certainly way up in the stratosphere. It really works. So here's a real life example of a church that did an energy audit and decided to follow through step by step on all the recommendations. This was, by the way, the same church that got the state-of-the-art HVAC system and realized, oh, it's not really doing much for us, and then got the energy audit and discovered all these things. So they decided that they were going to invest $232 in this project. The first thing that needed to be done was the fabulous HVAC system needed to be balanced by, the installer apparently didn't actually know all the bells and whistles of it to the extent they needed to. So it cost a fair amount of money to get the system really balanced so it was actually operating optimally. They upgraded their lighting to all LEDs. Weatherization, again, not glamorous and not expensive, but really effective. Weather stripping, door sweeps, just basic things. Insulation, this is the church that discovered they were heating the great outdoors, so their insulation cost was a little on the high side, but well worth it. And then smart tech, controls for HVAC lighting. So the pastor doesn't have to come in at 10:30 at night to turn off the lights or turn off the heat. It's done right on the phone. And then of course, carpentry, electrical design was part of it too. So from this project, their annual energy savings was $24,000. And they projected out a 20-year energy savings of $654,000. This number includes, it's not just 24 times 20, this includes the rising cost of energy that they're anticipating. So if you factor in the rising cost of electric and gas and throughout the 20 years, this is a number that they're saving. They are going to save $654,000 by doing this $232,000 project. But best of all, their annual carbon reduction is 30 tons of CO2, which is equivalent to taking 18 cars off the road each year, every year. So the return on investment, insulation is the big winner. 62% reduction in any energy costs were attributable to insulation in this project. So the lowly insulation really gave the biggest bang for its buck. All the smart technology and fun bells and whistles, really, 4% here, 4% there, it definitely adds up, but it's not the savior that you would think. That insulation is the workhorse of it all. So altogether, their project cost is 74% reduction in energy costs. So instead of paying $32,000 a year annually, they were paying $8,000 a year after this project is done. So that's a huge saving. It will pay for itself in 10 years. But in the meantime, that's $24,000 a year that the church can do something else rather than just heating and cooling. So UCC churches are in a great position to lead on creation care and energy stewardship. Your buildings are visible. The members of the community, the congregation look up to you for guidance. If solar panels go up on your roof, people will notice. If you even undertake an energy project, as simple as weather stripping, people will notice. It can set social change into motion. You can inspire, first of all, members of your congregation to maybe do it at home, but also other community organizations and businesses. So here's the list of resources that were mentioned in this slide deck. But as I said, we'll have others on our website. So please keep an eye on our website. We will continue to amass a really good library of resources that churches can use, not just to do solar projects, but to do any kind of energy-related project. And now I'm going to turn you back over to Maria, who can tell you about our program that we're launching specifically to help churches finance these kind of improvements.
Thank you, Rebecca. And this falls under the category of sneak peek because it'll be launching next week, fingers crossed, with the approval of the state securities administrators. We are looking to provide low-cost financing to do these types of creation care projects. We currently do these projects as standalone energy efficiency projects and as part of larger building improvement projects. So we have expertise in this area, but we want it to be available to more churches. So we'll be offering loans at the rate of 3.5%, and that capital will be raised by investors agreeing to a 1% rate of return on a 3-year impact investment with the Cornerstone Fund. We're terribly excited about this project. We think there's going to be all kinds of projects that we'll be able to do from small to large. Even today, we talk about a reclaimed water sewer project, kind of at the bottom of the cost scale of things that we've done, on up to huge green roof projects and total HVAC improvements on very large buildings. So watch for this coming soon. We can reach us however you want to reach us, either by phone or on our website. Additionally, we're going to be offering some upcoming webinars. Janine earlier mentioned several that we had done previously and we have recorded, and they're available to watch. But in the future, we're going to continue this climate care discussion. We'll have one webinar specifically on solar and another on the energy audit and creating an action plan. We've had a lot of interest from churches trying to upgrade their technology during COVID and beyond. We know that remote worship is not going to go away, that there will continue to be some hybrid form of worship going forward. And a lot of churches are interested in improving their technology. We're going to host that discussion. and then also transitions in property. You know, a lot of the projects that Cornerstone does are traditional maintenance and expansion projects on their building, but increasingly churches are looking for ways to use their property to have an impact in their community. Janine highlighted one of them, which is housing, but we're looking at all kinds of other interesting ways of transitioning the use of church property. So if you're interested in attending one of those future webinars, just send us your email. You can email us at info@cornerstonefund.org, and we will notify you when those are scheduled.